Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just on the Jimmy Lai, I just want to acknowledge Senator Risch, the chair of the committee, has also been pretty active with many of us in repeated statements on behalf of Jimmy Lai, and I know that will continue. Ms. Su, you've testified here before, and so you know that people in the room and people watching are a mixture of experts in the topic who care deeply about it and people who are coming to the topic new and who care deeply about it. So I'm going to ask you a very basic question. Why is the CCP afraid of you? You're a 26-year-old who started your advocacy when you were about 17 or 18. Why would they be afraid enough of you to put $1 million yuan bounty on your head?
I think that's because I create troubles. I've been doing that since I became a student activist in 2019, and unfortunately, I think my personal stories mirrors one of, Hong Kongers' overall resistance. I met the Chairman Curtis, back in 2019 when I was a student activist organizing citywide protests and, demonstrations on campus. That was also when Hong Kongers, in a small city of only 7 million people, as I noted, 2 million took onto the street to say no to the CCP's oppressions. And following that, the CCP has, doubled down on its crackdowns on our freedoms to assembly, expression, and association.
And by trouble, you mean assembly,
yeah.
Which we are guaranteed in this country, the right to peacefully assemble to petition government for redress of grievances, expression, protest. I don't view peaceful activity as trouble, but apparently some do. Is that right?
Yes, that is correct. The CCP sees our exercising of our rights to freedoms of assembly, association, and expression as a huge trouble. And that is why I think precisely the reason why they decided to further introduce the Safeguarding National Security Ordinance on top of the National Security Law.
And if I could just, on the expression side, you referenced briefly in your testimony but didn't explain, but again, for those who are here who care but may not be experts, the blank paper protest. So in Hong Kong and other parts of China, the degree of suppression of expression was so great that creative activists began holding up blank sheets of paper with no figures on them whatsoever as a way of demonstrating there are things we would like to say, but the repression of this government means that we cannot even put anything on this sheet of paper. And then the Chinese government has cracked down on the use of blank sheets of paper. Am I right about that?
You're correct.
And they've not only cracked down on it, but they've scrubbed social media accounts because Chinese citizens were searching blank sheet of paper, wonder what this is all about, and there has been a crackdown on the availability of even that search for Chinese citizens to find out what a blank sheet of paper means.
Yes, that is correct. And you see, after the introduction of Article 23, there had also been arrests and convictions made in Hong Kong for people who have worn a T-shirt with protest slogans. There have been arrests of individuals who have written protest slogans on buses and held blank pieces of paper in protest of the government with nothing written on it. And I think that speaks to the scale of the PRC's takeover and repression in Hong Kong. Let
me ask you one other question. There's an article that I'd like to introduce in the record. It's from Radio Free Asia. The title, CCP cheers RFA Cantonese's demise, dated July 9, 2025, recently. Talk a little bit about what Cantonese language Radio Free Asia has meant to Hong Kongers.
As I said, Senator Kaine, for the past 5 years, especially following the closure of Apple Daily and Stand News, RFA has become one of the few sources that kept on reporting about what has been developing inside of Hong Kong with Article 23 and the National Security Law. It was not just a source for Hong Kongers outside of Hong Kong or the international community to understand what the PRC is doing inside of Hong Kong, but also a source for people who are on the ground to understand what is happening, given that the PRC have revoked visas for international journalists and shut down other media outlets reporting on court news and everything else. And I cannot stress enough how important the Cantonese service of RFA has been to the people of Hong Kong. And just last month, the month before RFA's forced shutdown due to the funding cuts, they have reached 1.2 million people, readers online. And I think that speaks to the importance of RFA.
With that, I'll yield the remainder of my time back.